The Pittsburgh Steelers are historically one of the most successful franchises in NFL history. Between Mike no-losing seasons Tomlin, Bill Cowher, and Chuck Noll, we've had 3 head coaches in just about 50 years. Hell, we haven't had a losing season since 2003. But that doesn't mean that we Steeler fans do not know pain. See, pain should not be feared or avoided. It merely serves as a reminder that we are alive. So today I thought I'd throw together a tier list, ranking the most painful moments of the modern era for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And yeah, just to be clear, I'm not talking about the 1970s or anything like that. I wasn't around then, I don't know how people felt, it's just not important to me. So let's get started. When I ask you the most painful loss in Steelers history, what game immediately comes to mind?
And off to minute off. Matthews triggered it loose. Matthews with the biggest play of the game today. 3rd turnover, Pittsburgh.
It's entirely possible that Super Bowl 45 is the first name that popped into your head. And understandably so. Losing a Super Bowl to Aaron Rodgers, being the only team that Aaron Rodgers has beaten in the Super Bowl. And it's one of the few times throughout his entire career that Ben Roethlisberger had one last drive and didn't deliver. That's tough, but losing to one of the greatest arms and greatest football minds the game has ever seen, it could be worse. We'll put Super Bowl 45 firmly in the B tier. When I said that it could be worse than Super Bowl 45, I was mainly referring to Super Bowl 30. I mean, you have the scrappy underdog Pittsburgh Steelers led by newer coach Bill Cowher. Nobody really gave the lowly Steelers a chance going up against the mighty Cowboys. And this game really did have a lot of great moments, including Bill Cowher's onside kick that kind of gets lost to history.
Hey, let's do it. Surprise onside.
Kevin Williams and Brock Marion are the 2 deep, and the Steelers try an onside kick, and they got it! And a man running with the football at the 50, Deion Figures! How about that? Damn!
Now I'm cheating a little bit on this one, because I didn't experience this firsthand. But losing a Super Bowl, and losing a Super Bowl in embarrassing fashion the way they did, with Neil O'Donnell as your quarterback, it has to go on this list. But at the end of the day, it was an underdog story, we went up against a dynasty, and we almost took him down. And also, it was 1996. So, considering it was almost 30 years ago, we're going to put this in the D tier. But you know what couldn't have been much worse? Mitch freaking Trubisky. It is my personal opinion, he is one of the worst quarterbacks in the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, he's just freaking horrible. He has, I'd say, 1 or 2 good passes per game. Mitch is that meme, I can fix him, in a quarterback.
Stop the cap.
We're going to put the titty kisser firmly in the B tier. From a quarterback that doesn't get enough hate, to a quarterback that gets too much hate. Mason Rudolph mainly gets remembered for that 4-interception game against the Brownies, which is kind of unfair because it's the only multiple interception game of his entire career. Which, does that make him good? No, but it's certainly more than Mitch Trubisky can say. We did spend a 3rd rounder on Mason Rudolph. Do you spend a 3rd rounder on a backup quarterback? That does hurt a little bit, but as far as things go, there have been a ton worse backup quarterbacks in Pittsburgh than Mason Rudolph. We'll place Mason Rudolph in the D tier. If we're going to talk about other players that are basically only remembered for one bad game, we gotta talk about Fitzgerald Toussaint. The guy was a serviceable running back, I'll give that much to him. But, you already know the game, we all know the game. Playoffs, Denver, all we needed was a fucking touchdown. And no, there goes the ball, and there goes our season. We were a team riddled with injuries, we had just gotten off that fucked up Bengals game, and it finally caught up with us, at the worst possible time. There's worse things than losing to Peyton Manning, but it still hurts. We'll go ahead and put Fitzgerald's fumble in the C tier. Yeah, the Fitzgerald fumble may have sucked, but certainly there aren't any worse games we've had against Denver in the playoffs, have we?
The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all.
Got him.
Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stifford got him 3 to the 30, to the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England.
Does the name Timothy Richard Tebow ring a bell? You know, I don't know what the hell it is with Mike T's defenses collapsing in the playoffs, but it has become a theme. And a theme against maybe the worst starting quarterback in the NFL that year. Oh my god. Okay, did Tebow have great charisma and leadership, and did he bring out the best in the players around him? Yes. But he was also terrible. and he made our defense look like putrid shit in that game, at least in the second half. And I know there's some people out there that like to make the excuse that Ryan Mundy being in for Ryan Clark was the reason why we got carved up by Tim Bleeding Jesus Tebow, but I'm not buying it. Losing your season to Tim Tebow in the playoffs. So now from a bad playoff game to a bad game that had playoff implications. Let me take you back to 2017. Steelers versus Patriots.
To the end zone. Caught! Touchdown, Pittsburgh! Jesse James! 2 plays, they take it the distance. They are verifying it upstairs, and there's no doubt it's going to hold up.
That's a touchdown. That's got to be a touchdown. Look at James. Now, Smith-Schuster's going to wall off the safety, and James is right in front of him. He's down, but no one touches him, so he's going to get in the end zone. This is going to stand unless he gets touched.
No, he's in. He never got touched.
Sure.
Yeah.
Referee Tony Corrente.
After reviewing the play, the receiver in the end zone did not survive the ground. It's an incomplete pass.
This is unbelievable.
It'll be Pittsburgh's ball, 2nd down and 10 at the 10-yard line.
And then, of course, Ben doing what he does after he throws that touchdown, immediately throws a terrible interception that ruins the game. Seriously, as soon as that touchdown got overturned, I knew Ben was going to throw that fucking pick before the ball was even snapped.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
We're going to put Jesse James in the B tier. But hey, the Jesse James game was just for playoff seeding, right? I mean, that couldn't have had any real impact on the Steelers that year, did it?
Roethlisberger from the gun. Fires to the outside. Juggled. Miles Jack. Handoff. Fournette. Hurdles. Fournette. Cuts to the outside. Oh, Fournette. Handed off. Yeldon. Roethlisberger. Ball pops free. Rolling around. And it's scooped up. The speed of Telvin Smith. Goodbye. Touchdown, Jaguars!
After talking a healthy amount of shit about getting back to New England, the Steelers had one of the worst playoff collapses in team history. Our defense gave up a whopping 45 points to Blake Bortles. I also find it funny that Keith Butler's defense gave up 45 points, Todd Haley's offense scored 42, so they fired Todd Haley and kept Keith Butler. I don't really think either of them should have stayed after that game, but it's just funny how they made that decision to me. And on top of that, this was the best the Killer Bees had ever looked. Ben threw for 469 yards and 5 touchdowns in this game, and still lost. If our defense could have stopped a goddamn nosebleed that year, it's entirely possible that we would have made it to the Super Bowl. But it didn't, we collapsed, and now everyone laughs at us for losing to Blake Bortles. Gonna put the Jags in the A tier. Well, at least we don't have any other bad playoff games versus the Jags, do we?
And 2. Can the Jaguars survive? Garrard's gonna run for the first down, and a lot more. He is inside the 20. He's down to the 10-yard line.
Let me take you back to 2007, a full decade before we would collapse to them in the playoffs again. David Garrard. I don't know what our deal is with losing to subpar quarterbacks, but I mean, here it is, on full display. I mean, Garrard didn't have a good day against us necessarily, but I'll never forget this sneak. It's like, hey guys, you just lost your entire season to David Garrard and the Jags. Good job. Although considering that no one really remembers this game or talks about it all too much, I think we have no choice but to put this in the F tier. But it still hurts my feelings, just a little bit. We got one drive left. And then Juju fumbles. Fuck. Playing the Saints in the Dome is never going to be an easy task. But I mean, god damn, you were right there. You had it.
And it's gone.
What?
We're going to put Juju's fumble firmly in the C tier. Still love you, Juju. From fumble to bumble, who remembers Chase Claypool? Chase became one of the biggest memes in the NFL after moments like this, and it's just embarrassing. I thought Mapletron was off to a good start, too. He had that 4-touchdown game against the Eagles. He led the league in touchdowns among all rookie receivers. I mean, he had a good start. But then you started to see his focus drift. You started to see him run his mouth a little more and more. And then you had shit like this. I think this is the exact moment that Mike T realized he was probably going to get rid of Chase. I mean, this is just, what the fuck are you doing, Chase? Good God. We're going to put Claypool in the C tier, because it's fitting. Speaking of diva receivers, let's talk about Mr. Big Chest. I think a lot of people will expect me to put this in the A tier, but I'm not going to, and here's why. Because AB didn't do a whole lot of his shenanigans until after he had left the Steelers. I think the fact that Mike Tomlin was able to keep Antonio Brown under wraps for almost a decade should be enough reason for him to get into the Hall of Fame by itself. I mean, he has all these things, freezing his feet, calling the Raiders GM a cracker. No, that actually happened, I'm not kidding. And of course, being accused of doing some heinous shit. Thanks a lot, Brady, for bringing him back into the league. Great job. But again, he didn't do any of these things while he was on the Steelers. All he really did while he was on the Steelers was become one of the greatest receivers of all time. For that reason, we're going to go ahead and put AB in the C tier. Speaking of AB, though, let's talk about one of his funnier moments. So, we're playing against the really terrible Dolphins. We're losing, because we always do against bad teams. And it comes down to one last Hail Mary lateral attempt thing.
Sanders. Play the lateral game here for Pittsburgh. Backward pass. Roethlisberger now running. Shovels out for Brown. Brown's got room. Brown down the sideline. Miami trying to bring him down. Antonio Brown. Incredible.
He's out of bounds at the 13-yard line, Ian.
It's over. He's ruled out of bounds on the far side.
You want to talk about so near and yet so far? God, like, of fucking course. Like, even when this play happened, I got kind of excited, but I was pretty sure that there was going to be a penalty or Brown was going to step out at some point. It just seemed determined to happen. We're to go ahead and put this one in the F tier, but it was too much fun not to bring up. Speaking of teams that lose to the Dolphins, let's go ahead and talk about the Patriots, who have been the biggest thorn in our side as Steeler fans for over 20 years now. Whether it's the relentless checkdowns of Tom Brady that work perfectly well against a cover 3 defense, or the fact that Belichick seems to actively toy with Mike Tomlin whenever they play each other. Maybe it's the fact that the Patriots take practice seriously and the Steelers don't. Whatever the reason is, we have lost not 1, not 2, but 3 AFC championship games to them in the last 20 years or so. I think Ben's something like 4-9 in his all-time career against New England. Just seems like the Patriots always seem to kick our ass. And they still kind of do. If it weren't for the Patriots, it's entirely possible the Steelers would have 3 more rings.
And it's gone.
What?
Sorry, yeah, that's gone.
Gonna go ahead and put that one in the A tier. From losing to Tom Brady to losing to the GOAT, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's tough, man. I mean, I don't think there was really anybody who actually thought that we were going to win this game, but it still hurts. You know, to have Ben, one of the greatest gunslingers and one of the best deep ball throwers in the history of the NFL, to a Tom Brady clone that wouldn't stop throwing checkdowns, it was very disappointing to watch. I think the lasting image of Ben his last couple years will be him throwing pointless checkdowns down 28 points against Kansas City. That is the Steeler way right there. Gonna go ahead and put that one in the C tier. Did anybody think we were gonna win that game? Going now from a game that everyone thought we would lose to a game everyone thought we would win. This is, in my opinion, the worst wildcard game in Steelers history. Like, really, what's a worse wildcard game than this? I'll hold it up to you. I knew the game was over the second this happened. It doesn't matter that it was only 7-0. It doesn't matter that they still had the whole game to play. I knew for a fact they were not going to dig themselves out of that. It's one of those things you can't say that the game went downhill from there because they were just in the gutter the whole goddamn game. And it was the game that really showed that Ben was washed. This was the game. I don't care what anyone says, it wasn't the next year. This was the game that showed that Ben should have gone, and Ben just couldn't leave on a note like that. It did hurt seeing Ben and Pouncey crying on the sideline, knowing that this was Pouncey's last ride, and it might have been Ben's. Although this picture has never triggered me in the way that Browns fans always hope it does, because, I mean, hey, it was his best friend on the team, and he wanted to win for him. Gonna put the Brownies' playoff loss in the B tier. I feel like this game would have hurt worse if they didn't destroy all their momentum after that by trading for Deshaun Roethlisberger. But speaking of Deshaun, let's talk about Ben, who has, in his life, been accused of doing bad things. And in my opinion, it has hung over this organization like a black cloud for over a decade now. In my opinion, they should have gotten rid of him after 2010, but Tomlin and the Rooneys decided to bring him back, and the rest is history. And I think that our culture has suffered because of it. That's tough. And of course this list has to end with something tough like this, but I couldn't find anywhere else to put Shazier in this tier list. Shazier was potential Defensive Player of the Year. He was the best defensive player on the entire team outside of maybe Cam, but it always hurts me to look back at his highlights for the fact that myself and tons of other fans would scream at him constantly to stop lowering his head when he hit people, and man did it catch up to him in the worst way possible. I can only hope that he's happy every minute for the rest of his life.